All right, welcome. Excited to have you here. Um, this will be a live. I'm probably going to be sharing my screen, showing you some different things related to the topic at hand. Um, yeah, so just to start off, what I'm doing right now is part of what I'm talking about. Um, uh, as always, I'm a little hesitant, always framing. Mm, just to frame something in a particular way. But one of the ways I've been thinking about it is through the lens of performance art. Notably, this is a topic that the artist known as Grimes has commented on. So I want to make that connection because Grimes is in the thumbnail photo. And this is part of why. Um, Maybe we'll get into that in the course of things. But I really appreciated the Miss Anthropocene album. To Miss Anthropocene, there's also a document called the Chaos Manual. I guess I can show you in a second. It's also a helpful way. It's also so maybe I was just thinking I'll make a Substack post. So yeah, I don't know if I can share already. Yeah, so I can pull up my video link. You can't see that in the one, but I'm sharing this screen. So this is Enraged by the Performance Art. Performance art is working. So just as a demonstration that like I'm doing what I'm talking about. So like with the video that I'm making right now, you could call it performance art. So now I can just be like, hey, Grimes, like I'm referring to this post while I'm making a video, which is performance art. Isn't that crazy and meta, lol. And then I'm also going to tag some other people. And then I'll do that. So basically, like I was just operating in cyberspace while I'm on a video with you. So like I just took an action. So I mean, in a way, it was a material action, right? Like I just sent that post, and now that's like in somebody's like data forever or something like this. But so I'm doing it while I'm talking to you about it, and so one of the things that I recently did was to go to the office of the people that I just tagged. Maybe I can pull that up. Well, I can pull up their Twitter because they're not saying anything on Twitter yet. Like this office opened on the 2nd. I guess there's a government shutdown. So maybe the people who do the government shutdown, or like if they're not posting because of the government shutdown. Yeah, I guess it's helpful I can just go on my profile because I just posted about them. So then, yeah, it's one of the top things that my pinned post is currently about this. So this is the Army Transformation and Training Command. And so they're here in Austin. I guess I can show you. And so I'm not 100% sure. I went and just sort of like sat there. And so like I can show you, this is my sub sitting outside that office. And like in it, I talk about how like and like somebody in a sort of police type, like in a uniform came out and spoke to me, which is fine. Like yeah. Anyways, but it's all just very meta, like I'm sitting there, I'm basically operating in real life as well as cyberspace, I guess you could say, at the same time. And like but also the operation basically continues in time. Like it's still going on because now like we're back. At least if yeah, I guess my internet's kind of slow. Sorry about that. But we're back over here. Like I can still engage with this entity, supposedly. I can still tweet at it. So I can, am I sharing this? So like, this is another example tweet from my performance art live stream. So in that moment, like I'm sitting here, like I want to type deicide, but like I don't mean it. Yeah, like people take things really hard. So I don't want to play around with that. But so basically, like I could still post about them. And so those posts are all part of a corpus, right? It's in relationship. So the question of how influential is what I did. I mean, that's not, I'm not trying to overstate that or something. But I'm demonstrating sort of a form here, I guess I could say, in addition to a content. Because I think the content of what I'm doing, I think sort of is in question. That's why I feel hesitant, I guess. Broadly speaking, to be sort of engaged in like emergency response, like to think that there is a trepidatious situation and wanting to do something about it. Anyway, I was going to show you this on Google Maps. So I don't know if they have it on here yet. So this isn't there. But until recently, that's where they just called it the Army Futures Command. That's where that was. Yeah, this seems like the right place. AFC, right. So I went here. And then on that same day, I also went over to the Capital Factory. I haven't been back to these places, I don't think. But yeah, so the Capital Factory is located in the Omni Hotel. And so like the pictures that you see here are from there. Wait, so I have to share over here. Right. So this is while I was sitting there, like they were changing, or like the sign was being changed. So, I mean, so for example, there's various aspects of what I did where there's harm minimization. So first of all, like understanding that I could a frame that I could adopt in what I'm doing is sort of like special operations. But for me, importantly, in the context of emergency response, not war, although that's not immediately, there's no way for me to sit here and be like, oh, but like I'm harmless. But certainly like it's a big important part of like how I think about things. I have a slow, but I do actually have this up. I have this piece of writing, which is about, my affiliation for this idea of a complex emergency where war is a part of it. So it's like we have to deal with what you call the problem of war or something. And I guess I should ground this in Ben Zweibelson. I don't know what exactly that's supposed to be doing for me, but I think it is interesting. And I mean, this is it comes from this chapter of the book. I don't have this book, Reconceptualizing War, but I do have this chapter because it was shared with me by the author, Ben Zweibelson. That's like a odd part of my life. So like, it's something that I sort of try to leverage, I guess, but it's just like very strange because it's like, here I am, like I said, I'm at the Omni Hotel. I'm at, the Army Futures Office turning into, as it's transforming, right? I guess I hadn't even thought about that. But so, there's a transformation, which is bringing about, the Army Transformation and Training Command. And I'm there, right? And it was while I was there that I posted this post, which, I mean, I'm not saying it's the greatest post of all time, but it's whatever. And here I am, I'm talking about, performance art. And I'm able to tag Ben Zweibelson because Ben Zweibelson is also on Substack, right? And looking at Ben Zweibelson's Substack, we'll get to that part, I guess. But so these other pictures, right? So this is from when it was still Army Futures Command. So this is like back in time, right? So this picture was at the top was taken later than this next picture. Yeah, I wrote their handle wrong. This should say T2ComHQ because that's what I'm referring to. Like, and then this is my handle on, oh, you can't see the cursor, but the lower sticker where it says experimental unit, right? Like that's my handle on Twitter. So like what I'm doing is I'm showing pictures of our handles, like in a picture where I'm at the place. Maybe I should have been touching the sign, like making contact. But it's like I don't even have to touch the building, I guess, is part of it. It's like I still created the image where like I am together with that place or at least the sign of that place. So there's I don't know, there's just things are complexly in reference to each other. I guess that's just always the case. But as you can see here, like this is my handle, experimental unit. Yeah. So I wanted to also basically show that there are pictures from, I also went to Comedy Mothership. So that's also down here. I guess I could show you that on the maps. But this is then from Capital Factory, right? So this picture was taken in the Omni Hotel. And then, the first pictures were taken around this few, you'd say the Futures Command, the Transformation and Training Command. And I guess I need to share this. Is it going to be able to do it? I think maybe I did this wrong. Yeah, so like these are the places that I went. And so what I'm thinking about in terms of what I might do in like these, I don't know, these places are close to each other. They're in Austin. I just took the bus. The bus goes down here. Yeah, so in a way, I'm just calling attention to like this form. And I'm also, as I said in the beginning, reiterating that like this video is also itself, a performance art. I guess here I am just to talk here, right? I'm in real life and it's being recorded. I guess it's a funny thing in the age of AI where, the whole thing with an AI video is that it's not a representation, right? There's not something that has to happen in real life. But that's just part of the broader situation, which is all related. But so I wanted to open up with this idea of performance art. I think it helps provide a lens to talk about the title of the video. So in that, I basically combined a few acronyms that I created, and they're present in the cover video. Thumbnail or like the title of the video, right? It says ZWGB equals PDHNB plus CSSIEROA. And so these are all basically acronyms that I created where it's in conversation, right, with military acronyms. We can go back to, T2ComHQ, right, is the handle of this place. So T2 means that there's two T's, right? It's transformation and training. So yeah, that's like a military. Oh, and it's right here too, right? So that stands in for sort of like a concept handle, because in the military, or in this usage, I guess you could say, like part of the trope, I guess, is you're being very brutal with meaning. Like you're creating a concept handle which like refers to a complex set of ideas, and you don't really care about the, I don't know, the understandability of it, or the prettiness of it. You just need pretty short, unique set of characters. So I built these acronyms. They're not fundamental or anything, but I've been using them, and I think talking about them in the course of this performance art is sort of what I want to be doing. I've been trying to write about these. I've been trying to write about all these things I've been talking to you about already, and more in terms of interesting concepts and inspirations that I have. And it's pretty difficult to do in writing. And even this, I mean, I'm very self-conscious about how this is, but here we are. I forget where I was going with that. Oh, the performance art opening up into this. So maybe the quickest way is to start with this G right here. The G in ZWGB, right, stands for Gesamtkunstwerk. Performance art gets into this idea of the total work of art. This idea of the total work of art is already fraught. It's very associated with Richard Wagner, which basically it can be associated with I want to say national chauvinism or something, but it's really not a question of designating, like putting it in a category and saying that category is bad, so much as like all art is taking place in a world of violence or something. And broadly speaking, like I forgot to, again, this is the chapter that was shared with me, and so I keep honing in on this passage where Ben Zweipelson, who like works in the U.S. military, quote unquote, or whatever, is talking about how they aspire to a future where the problem of war is solved. But even more so, I think that this statement, because we can set into question, whether solving the problem of war is really the overall issue, right? We can put the notion of solving problems into question with the question of with the phrasing of dissolving problems, and we can get into niceties there. We can ask whether or not what we're dealing with is really a problem at all. Like maybe the framework where we see things as problems is itself a problem, and you can think about it more as a puzzle or something else, right? And then war, you can think about, well, is it really war? Is war really the fundamental issue, or is war as we know it, or as we would I don't know, what we assume other people think of, I guess, when we say war. What am I trying to say here? Is that like an emergent situation that comes out of something else? And for me in particular, that becomes an issue of like, well, if we're dealing with war, does that mean that we're warriors? Does that mean that we are on a side and we are trying to win for that side? And so the way to solve the problem of war is to win the war, right? Or to win war forever. And so the question of like, is that the solution to the problem, or is there a way in which I guess sort of like war games, the way to win is to not play or something. But given that we are forced into a world, right, where we have to play the hands we are dealt, and we are in the situations that we're in, we arise out of the conditions, the technology is where it is. Yeah, you got to do something with it. But anyway, there's this, as Dr. Schwambelson talks about, increasing apprehension at the unfolding future possibilities and conflict already facing our species. So we're even, compared to when this was written, we're seeing the manifestation. Yeah, so even what I'm trying to say is, aside from the solution of solving the problem of war and whatever that might mean, it's clear in a way, like what is the motivating factor, which is that, unfolding future possibilities in conflict give us increasing apprehension, right? So apprehension, I mean, you could substitute terror, right? We are terrified. We are in a terrifying situation. It's horrifying. It's sort of like a horror movie. And different people see it from different lenses. So like, who is the big bad? Like, who is the evil? And that's part of why it is it seems like such an impossible situation, because people are, like, in addition to, we have our own idea, like I think, oh, it's the billionaires or whatever. And then somebody else is like, oh, it's the, some ethnic outgroup or religious outgroup or whatever. And it's like, in addition to like having a framing where we blame certain people more or less, we can also appreciate stepping aside from that. We can see like how many people are at each other's throats or whatever, or blame each other. So that it seems like even if we don't fight, right, that the fighting will continue. And so that is sort of what forces the issue into feeling like we have to join the fray or whatever. I think that basically what I'm constantly discussing is, it's not refusing to join the fray. This is actually a really important thing for me, even like connecting to some personal stories. So yeah, like wanting to get involved, but maybe not as a warrior. So that's, in a way, everything that I do is a gesture also to you, right? To iterate on what I'm doing. So I don't, especially, I really like Borgias, right? So even if I knew what I was doing, which I'm experimenting, basically would be a way to put it. I wouldn't necessarily know how to put it in words. And so like, I'm trying to communicate to you like impulse. So like, think about these sorts of things, and which maybe you are, and maybe this gives you some inspiration. I don't know. So I was trying to tie this together with the idea. So basically, I was saying that the total work of art idea is fraught because it's associated with Richard Wagner, who basically is associated with German nationalism, which is obviously associated with Nazism, which is widely understood to be a very destructive set of ideas, and what to say, for us now operates sort of a discursive point of centrality, and especially with recent events, I guess you could say, in the United States. We're seeing a lot of comparisons. This theme of Nazism and nationalism, obviously, has gone nowhere. This is a very present concern, and the question of how to deal with that is paramount, because these are the sorts of questions that could lead to large scale kinetic violence, right? So again, going back over here, like this is the kind of thing which gives us increasing apprehension at the unfolding future possibilities of conflict. So I guess you could relate it to like World War I, or just basically the idea that as the nation, like if you think that there's the danger of thinking like that the solution to the situation is for your group to win, but the thing is everybody thinks that, and so that's how you sort of start marching off to war, and you might get involved in a conflict which just winds up being much more destructive than you understand. And so it's like the logic of the conflict outpaces the conceptualization of the conflict, I guess, to where like the transformation which is unleashed is transforming what you were motivated by in the first place. But anyway, that's the sort of tangential concern for now, because it's just that every time I want to mention Gesamtkunstwerk, I mean, it's no accident that the things from this acronym. Here we are. These are all German words. Zeitgeist, Welt, Schmerz, Gesamtkunstwerk, Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg, in particular, obviously is associated with Nazism. Although Blitzkrieg, I think, has a bit broader of a definition. It's obviously understood as something which is being referenced, and I think part of that for me is just trying to foreground some of the most difficult topics. It also is present in this P. Is it in all of them? I guess sort of. Anyway, in the PHDH. So this one is Permanent Hardcore Dachau Highway Nihilist Blues, which is a sort of like acronym starting off from Permanent Blue, which comes up in a song by Grimes, and then adding on like different forms of the blues that are referenced in another 4 songs. One of those, though, is called Dachau Blues. I guess I can just pull that up. Yeah, so this is sort of like going popcorn style, but that's about what you'd expect. Yeah, so there's obviously the video, but then, these are the lyrics. It's all about, Jewish people being killed in Dachau in World War II during the Holocaust. And, there's other lyrics in the second verse about, the young ones are begging the old ones, please, to stop being madmen before they have to tell their children about the burnings back in World War III's. So there's a lot of different ways you can interpret this. There's a really interesting Baudrillard interview where they're discussing like the idea of the Fourth World War. Yeah, I don't know if we can even get the whole thing here, but I just want to reference that this is a thing. You have Baudrillard talking about the Fourth World War, and I think had referenced that the Third World War, so that you have to pay for this, so I can't show you. But it does exist. Just basically the idea that the World War III was the Cold War. And so in that sense, the burnings in World War III is like you could compare this to, napalm in the Vietnam War or any number of, kinetic conflicts that have been happening since World War II, which gestures at sort of a broader sense of the idea of Holocaust, I suppose. And, oh gosh. Oh, did I close the window? No. Yeah, I think that's very important because I'm trying to push into the foreground. Questions of evil, I suppose, or like some of the most difficult concepts for us to look at. I think it's very important for us to deal with things straightforwardly, I suppose. I think it's very difficult to do. What do I have to say about this? I mean, yeah, I'm getting kind of lost here, but I can sort of relate it. It reminds me of my interest in this concept called theodicy, which refers to sort of the problem of evil, I guess you could say, when it comes to religion. And it's normally associated with things like Judaism and Christianity and Islam, so sort of like what we think of as being monotheist. But in general, it's also related, I think, to, in Buddhism, for example, the question of, why is there suffering? And so, like, why are bad things happening? And I think it relates to the question of the total work of art, because if you're thinking about sort of God's creation or something like this, and so this is an example of something that I am hesitant to talk about because it's easy to speak too definitely, I guess, especially when it comes to something like God or religion. Like even just choosing the word God, like I think there's so many other words you could choose. In a way, I'm trying to get a certain idea across, but I'm wary of reinforcing a certain rigid conception of what it is that I'm talking about. What else do we have? So in theodicy, basically the question is about there's one creation, there's an overall thing that's going on. And so the question is, like, if the impetus, like what if what created the world, like if God is good, basically, why are there bad things in the world? And so it basically becomes you could look at it as a question of art criticism. It's sort of like you are criticizing the creation by God, you're basically saying, well, the world is bad because, there's all this bad stuff in it. Or you could be trying to basically interpret something which seems bad to be like, oh, well, it's actually secretly genius. It's almost like a bad movie. Like, I don't know if people actually think something like The Room, which I haven't seen, but there's a really famous movie called The Room, which is considered to be very bad, I think. But on the other hand, it becomes a sort of like cult object. Like, in a way, it's an important work of art, even if people think that it's like not good. But in the broader sense, if you're like interpreting creation or something, it's not, you're not talking about a bad movie. You're talking about like the Holocaust, right? So there's something called Holocaust theology. This is very interesting. I don't know if you'd say it's a subset. It's related to theodicy. It's obviously related to Holocaust in the sense of like what's known as the Holocaust, the Nazi German National Socialist Party killing of Jewish people in World War II and in the years before that. Oh, and then for me personally, right, like this relates to my personal history because I'm half German. And so my mother, what you call my mother's, like a set of my grandparents was raised in Nazi Germany. And, they were both in the Hitler Youth. And one of them fought in the Nazi army when they were young. It's like a really, it's a fraught thing to talk about because I'm sitting here being like if I acknowledge that, my grandparents, fought, first of all, that they fought for the Nazis. What's that supposed to mean? People will often like say to me like, oh, well, but you didn't do it and something like that. And it's like, okay, but also like the way I'm related to that person, like my parent was conceived after that happened, which wouldn't even really matter, but still like basically that chain of people or something, like it wouldn't, like my family lineage, if you want to put it that way, would not exist in the way that it does if it weren't for these events, which is in a way, I think, true of everybody. But, that's part of what I'm trying to convey and refer to. What is basically, we're all caught in these things. Part of the reason why, like, it's so important that we have to, I would say, be open, but like really get into the nitty gritty and deal with really negative, I guess you could say, issues, is because like we are implicated in them. So similarly, this is where it's easy for me to feel fraught. That's why I feel hesitant. That's why I am often struggling to know how to express myself. But something which conveys a similar vibe, I think, is, for example, talking about the issue of suicide. Suicide, I think, is a very stark, very grave matter. It's sort of similar to the Holocaust. And where was it being referred to? Oh, actually, it was being referred to in a conversation between Ben Zweibelson and Ofer Gracier. So that's another. What shall we say? Is this what it is? It's in this video. I think Ben Zweibelson is talking about forbidden topics coming up. He was saying operator suicides. But so, it relates to special operations forces. But this is a little all over the place. What are we saying here? Oh, but like suicide. So like when we talk about something like suicide, we might want to keep it at a distance, or even if we are going to open up about, our personal relationship with it, or, people that we know who committed suicide or who were suicidal or something like this. No matter how much we try to be like authentic and raw about it, there's always a way in which it can become stilted. And I guess you could say there's degrees of this. Opening up with just something being a difficult topic. And I mean, obviously it makes sense why people might not want to talk about something all the time. But I think that, what to say? I want to say that demonstrates that in a way we're in a hostile environment, like if we feel like we are not able to, I don't know if you say discuss how we're compromised. Yeah, there's just there's different levels to it with different sort of stigmatized or difficult topics. Oh shit, I'm still on that. I was trying to come back over to Holocaust theology. I think they're related because like whatever it is, which is like individually hard for us to talk about because we feel implicated in it, right? And so we're not sure what to say. We're in a sort of moral quandary where it's like we want to advocate for ourselves, but we're also, you said questioning our motives, but yeah, it's just a funny thing because some people, of course, are just very ruthless and they don't question their motives because the world is understood to be a very brutal place. It's the kind of place where holocausts happen, and it's sort of like a kill or be killed mentality. And so the whole question is whether this kill or be killed mentality winds up leading to a situation where everybody dies, right? And so the question of should we try and avoid that? There's a passage, I don't know if I can find it in Baudrillard. I posted it recently, though, where Baudrillard's basically talking about holding people back from going all the way with power or something. And so it's basically like, do you want to save people from themselves or have them witness the consequences of their actions or something? And so for me, that's really related to the question of theology and theodicy, because this motivates so many discussions around like heaven and hell. And so bringing it back to the grounding I was trying to give with the total work of art, it's sort of like you're thinking about all of God's creation. And so the sort of narrative role of the afterlife has something to do with theodicy, because it's like people are doing bad things, and so you think they're going to be rewarded or punished at the end of life, because it's like life's not fair, so that means it is a flawed work of art. And so that's why we are very invested in the idea of what will happen after we die. And so in the meantime, these sorts of interpretations of the world have a lot to do with like what people are fighting about. And even if you don't want to look at it that way, because people will talk about, for example, with the conflict with Israel and Palestine, or just like the state of Israel in general, which notably, Ofer IDF, or has worked for them. Ofer Gracious is associated with the Israeli Defense Forces, and there's also Shimon Nabe associated with them. And so again, like this is fraught. Again, going back to comparisons being made between Israeli actions and Nazi war crimes. And so right now we're in a place. I don't even know what source to show you. I think that the basic idea of the comparison between Israel and Nazis is well known, and so it's like obviously the kind of thing people, it's obviously bitterly contested. Obviously anybody who supports or is providing support of the state of Israel or whatever, obviously would not enjoy that comparison. Although that's a place where it gets super fraught, I guess, because you could say there's probably people within Israeli civil society who are like, well, killing a lot of people, like, we look bad, we're becoming a pariah or whatever, and so this is actually bad for us. And then it's a whole fraught thing because I was speaking with Ben Swibelson on Twitter or something about this. It was one of the latest notifications I got from Ben Swibelson, which maybe I even have. Oh no, wait. I don't know if they just liked. I was going to see maybe there was some interaction on the posts that I just made as part of this video. But one of the things that was saying, like, I was talking about like the idea of the comparison between Israel and Nazis being very important, but really not really coming out in favor or against it. And I was also referencing how like I had the experience of telling people about Ben Zweibelson and having them say like, oh, well, Ben Zweibelson is a fascist because like they work for so yeah, we're still not there. Productive. Like, I don't think it's related to like a basic idea that like scapegoating of this conversation because Ben Zweibelson, I'm trying to pull it up for you to show you. But yeah, obviously the comparisons between Israel and Nazi Germany has its own Wikipedia page. So I wonder if comparisons between Donald Trump and Nazi Germany has its own Wikipedia page, because there's also a lot of references there. And so like there's elected officials here in America talking about, you know, there's authoritarianism on the rise in America. And so similarly, like going back to the Israeli example, like there might be people in Israel who think that like what's been going on is like not good for Israel. But then like you could equally as well have people who think that those people are undermining right national unity or something like this. So it's basically like some people, I don't know, yeah, there's like people getting carried away, or you know, there's certain nationalists in power and they think that they're doing what's right for the country or whatever. And then there's other people who think that actually that sort of hardcore nationalism or whatever, that's actually bad for the country. And so anyway, that's a really obvious thing. Like these people are locked in a debate about which one is good or bad, I suppose. But so it gets really fraught because here I am, I'm talking about, you know, Ben Zweibelson, Ofer Gracier, Shimon Nave, you know, the military design movement. And in the meantime, like there are also books that have been written. I don't know if I can. There is a whole book that somebody wrote, which is sort of like a description of stuff like the military design movement and Shimon Nave and exactly how they perceive that it is used, you know, in a, let's say, in a negative way, right? To sort of be authoritarian and sort of rule over people. I do think that immediately opens up the question of like, well, what's the nonviolent answer, I guess. And I think that is a very difficult, or like it's a very open question. I think that obviously there's many of us, you know, we don't want to see, you know, bombs falling and all of this. But the unfortunate, I would say unfortunate reality, but the challenge for us, right, is that there have to be reasons why this is happening. And so like those reasons have to be dealt with. It's not just a matter of wishing something would go away. In fact, like this idea of just wishing something would go away is part of what's on display, you know, when we try to, you know, kill people in order to just sort of like make the issue of the idea that we have enemies like go away. There's a very famous, it's a funny thing because it's a clip from a movie called War Machine, and War Machine is an interesting term because it's associated with like Deleuze and Guattari, who's the kind of philosopher who would be taken up by the military design movement. I'm trying to find, let's see, if I do whiteboard, I don't know. But basically it's the part where in War Machine, speech, I don't know. Basically the person is on display sort of talking about how like if you kill people, you actually create more enemies. Very basic idea. But you know, when we're opening up to, this is probably going to end the screen share. But so when you're opening up to a situation where you have a global battle space and you're basically, everything that you do is a demonstration not only to like the individual or the group that you're targeting, but to everybody. Yeah, which loops us back around to performance art. So it's like trying to wrap together many different things like into a presentation. So I'm very interested in that. I think it sort of drives forward, you could say like the logical type of discourse. So if I go back to all of these acronyms that I made up here, saying that the ZWGB equals PHDHNB plus CSSIEROA. So ZW basically equals PhD. Oh, I didn't even realize it has PhD. But yeah, PhDHNB. So the permanent hardcore Dachau highway nihilist blues is basically a way of talking about melancholia. And so it wraps together these different references in a way which, I don't know, just like refers to some specific artworks. So it's branching out there. But it's basically getting across this idea of melancholy, and in particular in our world. I think I was trying to gesture before that, it's talking about the Dachau blues. So Dachau blues, right, is a way of talking about the Holocaust. Do I have this here? I thought I had the Dachau blues thing. Oh yeah. And the trepidation we feel because, there could be a Holocaust to come. So that's related to, a different reference to Two Suns in the Sunset by Pink Floyd. So in addition to, the Holocaust, the Nazis, part of the reason why I think it's so important to deal with these topics, I mean, people bring them up, but I think it's, what do I mean? Basically, I think it's important to be, in a sense, like critical, not to just sort of, like, the question when thinking about Nazism is not even really the question of like, are you going to take it up? Like, are you going to become a Nazi? It's more so like, what are you doing with this as a found material? Like, it's important to, comment on it and understand that, in our moment, we are in the process of trying to overcome the logic of extermination and killing and destruction, I guess. And so, when it comes to, thinking about Nazis, whether you sort of take up Nazism or you have this hardcore, I could say anti-scapegoating, but, this projection of Nazism as like the ultimate evil. Either way, like, you're engaging with this sort of like enemy logic. I think it's very telling when you see people engage online being like, well, you have to, exterminate the Nazis. Basically, you have to exterminate Nazism. But so, I guess it relates to stuff like free speech and the Streisand effect, because I definitely, part of what I'm saying is motivated by the idea that it's not going to help to just try and like stamp out discussion. So the question is like having a better thing to say about the topic. And I guess I'm thinking about a smaller scale example, like where you have people who are locked. Basically, you could have people who think that they need to kill each other, that they're in a battle to the death, and then they're able to have some form of exchange where then they're able to get over that and they don't have to do that anymore. And the question is, how can we do this very broadly? So that's why when I think about sort of the audience for what I'm doing, I'm sort of in a country, also the country that I happen to be from, the quote unquote United States of America, is also, considered, I guess, the most powerful country or something. So being in discussion with, I don't know, that country or like the idea of that holds a certain significance. I'm also, as I mentioned, my two of my grandparents are, German nationals. I'm a dual national. So that immediately gives me I was born in the borders of what's considered Germany, right? Which is another reason. Again, that sort of thing is incorporated into these acronyms here, but I think that the dynamics that I'm talking about are, you could say, they're transnational. So the issue is not just, there's hyper-nationalists within one country, or there's people undermining the nation within our country or whatever. And it's not just that, there's, China is bad, or, Russia is bad. So this would be another bone to pick that I have with Ben Swibelson's Substack, actually. There's an article that I've been talking about recently. which is about techno-eschatology. So yeah, this figured into the last one. But so Ben Swabelson is really given over to talking about like the free world and like authoritarian competitors. You know, that it's like we have to make sure America wins over China because China is authoritarian. Or I guess it's not explicitly stated, but you know, like these terms are pulled out. Like, and I would basically that is where I wouldn't say Ben Swabelson is a fascist, but in terms of like what Ben Swabelson says in their public statements, like I think that it would be difficult. Say if Ben Swabelson didn't really agree with these conceptualizations, like it would be hard for them to, or yeah, they might not be able to say so, basically. So because they're in the position of being in the United States military, regardless of their understanding of whether you really are in a nationalist problem or not, they're going to express themselves that way. But it also seems that this is what they believe. But so notably, when I think about this, it kind of goes back to theodicy. I don't exactly blame people for being wrapped into sort of like power rhetoric and having to sort of play into these sorts of distinctions, even like regardless of whether or not they really believe in them. But yeah, basically because as I was saying, it ties into theodicy because it's sort of like this issue of war, like, and these sorts of narrative competitions. This is obviously part of the game or the creation. It's part of what has given rise to us, and so it's not exactly to be condemned, but that's also not to say that we should accept it as it is or not seek to change it. I suppose this gets to some in reference to Ben Swabelson, which would make sense that they would come up here, which is that Ben Swabelson posit this basic distinction between regulation and radical change. So the basic question of like, are you trying to change what's going on, or are you interested in either understanding how there can be an order or understanding how to continue it? And so that's the reason why I bring that up, is that I think it's related to the basic question of like, well, are you trying to change something, or are you trying to keep something the same? So even if I'm rankling, basically, if I don't really appreciate this like free world versus authoritarian regime framing, the question would be like, am I trying to transform something, transform perceptions about this, or am I trying to, I don't know, keep it the same? I guess I would say that the reason why I rankle at the phrasing is that, I guess you could say facts on the ground, are again sort of on both sides. And I guess overall, I think that the term authoritarian is obviously has a negative connotation. Like, I don't know how you could sort of try and reframe these things so that it's not obvious just by saying, which one of the ones you consider to be good and which ones you consider to be bad. I would relate that to the Politics of the English Language by Orwell, where there's basically the discussion that many words just basically come to mean good or bad. Let's see. Yeah, so that's basically what this part is about. There's no agreed definition, and you also don't want to make one. Yeah. So, what am I thinking about? Yeah, coming back to over here. So, like, am I trying to change Ben Swabelson's mind? or like, it gets to a more basic question of like, okay, so you have states. Do you think they're good or bad? And where I would want to iterate would basically be to put into question, is there really a state? So I've talked about that with, I wonder if it's still saved. Yeah. So I have my trusty Abrams here. The notes on the difficulty of studying the state. Probably a lot of people wouldn't accept that either. But it basically distinguishes between the idea of the state. Certainly we have this idea, right? There is a state of Israel. There is America and Russia and China and Germany, and there's all these different countries. So in addition to like the state apparatus, we also have like the nation, so that even if the government fell, if the government of a country was overthrown, like that country would in a sense also still be there. And the question would be, who is going to come to power in that country? Or the country could fall apart and like other countries would take it over. But for us, the idea is all of the land is taken over by some country. But the question of what exactly that is, like in terms of social ontology, I think is mysterious. And that is also constantly like what we are grappling with. So this would get to for example, so and the idea of performance art, because even though it's not a person doing a performance, I think that this thing where there were statues of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein that were installed on the National Mall, I think this is basically the same kind of thing that I'm talking about. There's also other ways you could conceptualize it, notably, situationism. But I guess you could also just think about it like an influence operation or a psychological operation or something like this. And that's another thing. It's like very funny. I'm like connected with various military people, like including like psychological operators or people who claim that they are on LinkedIn. That's another like, yeah, I guess I should show it as part of the performance. But yeah, so in terms of my performance, the meta version is like, here I am in cyberspace. I was just referring to, posting, and I was